Hi, and welcome back to Edge of Wonder. This has been the craziest election in modern history. Maybe the craziest election in human history. And all eyes are watching it.
This election wouldn't be as crazy as it has been without the help of the Chinese Communist Party. We know they have a hand to play in this election. They seem to have influenced many elections around the world.
The communist agenda has shaped our modern world into what it is today. So we thought we'd take a look at how China influences elections to aid in their quest to take over the world.
Much of what we are seeing this year seems to have happened before in other parts of the world, including Soviet Russia and Communist China. In our Cancel Culture and Election Fraud series, we talked about what happened in Russia after the Bolshevik Revolution.
And we talked about how Russian peasants were radicalized. There were some Russian farmers who had obtained a little wealth and status by working hard to farm their lands and provide food for many people.
Those who didn't have much were made to believe that these farmers obtained their wealth through some kind of privilege. As a result of this, these farmers, or kulaks, as they were called, were rounded up and shipped off to Siberia, where they froze to death.
And then 6 million Ukrainians starved to death because they relied on the food provided by those Russian farmers who were suddenly unable to farm their lands. This was known as dekulakization. A similar thing happened in China in the 1940s. This type of classicide, as it was known by, was responsible for the extermination of a class of people.
In Russia, there was the assigning of class guilt too, which greatly contributed to the dekulakization. By grouping people into classes and then assigning them as an identity like rich or poor or oppressed and oppressor. This caused many people to see others who were just like them as an enemy.
Does that sound like the white privilege that we're experiencing right now? Anyway, back to our story. In 1948, an associate of Mao Zedong made it clear that the Communist Party's intentions were, quote, 30 million landlords and rich peasants will have to be destroyed, unquote. The Chinese communists of the time won the hearts and minds of millions of Chinese peasants, radicalizing them. This led them to killing those who were assigned to the privileged class.
Winning hearts and minds prompted a land reform. The only problem, though, was the landowners. They would need to be removed and destroyed. And they were. Millions were killed. When Mao took power, he initiated the catastrophic Great Leap Forward.
Great Leap Forward. More like the great destruction of a country.
Exactly. It's so true. This was basically a plan to destroy Chinese culture and to move China away from a farming society and into an industrial society. Mao moved some people into farming camps where others worked in manufacturing.
But since Mao tried to control everything so much and tried to do everything as cheaply as possible, nothing was done right. Sounds like modern China. He used Soviet farming techniques to produce his own cheap farming. They cut corners like planting crops close together instead of spacing them out like you're supposed to do. They also plowed 6 feet deep to encourage root growth. But all this really did was damage farmland. I mean, what was he trying to do? Like social distance the roots or something? 6 feet between... Seriously.
Mao also had people set up backyard furnaces to produce steel. The problem was that nobody really knew what they were doing. Also, to meet quotas, people would melt down their own pots and pans, which produced unusable material.
This so-called a Great Leap Forward caused much environmental damage. In order to heat the furnaces, forests were burned down to produce the wood needed. And because so many farmers were sent into steel production, there weren't enough people to harvest crops. This caused food to rot in the fields.
The Great Leap Forward produced disastrous results. Millions of people starved to death. It's estimated that 20 to 48 million people died during this time. The reason we bring up this piece of history is because it is extremely relevant to what is happening right now in the US.
Yeah, and it's important to understand who and what we're dealing with here. Are we not seeing the radicalization of the far left-leaning individuals? Are we not seeing Democratic politicians winning the hearts and minds of many people? And remember, these are the same people that are burning cities to the ground right now.
Yeah. Joe Biden uses 3 red stripes for the E in his name on his banner for president. But why do we care? Well, many are saying that these 3 red stripes actually refer to the 3 red banners associated with Mao's revolution, and this so-called Great Leap Forward.
According to Wikipedia, 3 red banners was an ideological slogan in the late 1950s which called on the Chinese people to build a socialist state. Mao's Cultural Revolution called for many young people to rise up and rid the nation of what was referred to as the 4 olds: old customs, old culture, old habits, and old ideas. Is this not what is happening here now, people?
Yeah, really. Many young people are rising up against American ideals, which they believe are all based on slavery and racism. They seek to tear down American culture and rebuild it in their own image. I mean, whatever that image may be.
Whatever crappy image that may be, I may add.
Seriously. I mean, they're putting up they're leaving statues of Lenin, but tearing down statues of Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, and next month they're going to be putting statues up of friggin' Teletubbies and Harry Potter. Seriously.
Probably. So Mao had what was called the Red Guard to carry out the destruction of the 4 olds. The first group of the Red Guards were students.
Is this not mostly what Antifa and BLM members are now? They're students, or at least college-age people, who are acting remarkably like Mao's Red Guard. And like we've mentioned before, Antifa originated in the Soviet Union, and the Black Lives Matter founders themselves have admitted that BLM exists to push a Marxist revolution. The founder of BLM is a proud Marxist student.
I think that the criticism is helpful. I also think that it might I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists.
Yeah, and as we can see, communism has influenced America for a long time. Fortunately, though, America has never been an actual communist nation. I mean, so far we have been able to avoid the extremes of communism and have not suffered the fate of communist China and former Soviet Union. Well, at least not yet, although our tax system is pretty much a socialist tax system.
You can say that again, especially if you live in California. So if the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, is to take over the United States officially and really push for a cultural revolution the way it happened in Soviet Russia and Communist China, how would they go about doing that?
Maybe by controlling powerful politicians and using a political party to push communist ideals on their behalf. How about influencing elections?
Spamouflage dragon.
Well, according to the Epoch Times, Spamouflage Dragon is a pro-CCP spam network that is responsible for creating many fake social media accounts on several platforms.
And it's all in an attempt to influence the 2020 presidential election. The CCP regime began the Spamouflage Dragon network in the summer of 2019. The strategy of this network is to discredit the Trump administration and their policies by using social, electronic, and cognitive hacking to influence the way someone might vote.
Yeah, initially the network was used to discredit the protesting in Hong Kong. Then the attention moved to the COVID-19 narrative, praising the CCP's response to the outbreak. But back in July of 2019, the Spamouflage network began creating accounts on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter specifically to influence public opinion in America. Doesn't that sound like election interference to you?
Yeah. The network used emotionally charged headlines that were negative towards the Trump administration. It also used positive images of Joe Biden and just flat out predicted that Trump would lose the election.
And speaking of hacking, we talked about Dominion voting systems in an earlier episode and how that system seems to have glitched. It changed Republican votes to Democrat votes. Not only that, but the CEO of the company said that components for this system actually came from China. Supposedly, there is no option to get these components in the US.
It was revealed by the CEO of Dominion Voting that Chinese components such as LCD screen components, chip capacitors, and resistors are used by the company. And crazily, it seems that South Korea's election was affected by these components as well. The supposedly unpopular candidate, President Moon Jae-in, won that election by a landslide.
Yeah, and China's Huawei Information Network's telecommunication equipment was revealed to be involved with the vote counting machines used in the South Korean election. South Korea's National Election Commission, or the NEC, supposedly uses Huawei equipment to provide internet as well as Wi-Fi to handle pre-vote ballots. Now I think we all understand why Trump was trying to ban Huawei here in the US.
Dominion voting systems are also connected to the Clintons through the Delian Project. From the Clinton Foundation website, quote, in 2014, Dominion Voting committed to providing emerging and post-conflict democracies with access to voting technology through its philanthropic support to the Delian Project, as many emerging democracies suffer from post-electoral violence due to the delay of the publishing of election results. Over the next 3 years, Dominion Voting will support election technology pilots with donated automated voting machines, AVM, providing an improved electoral process and therefore safer elections, unquote.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound fishy at all, right?
Very fishy.
Pretty much everyone is aware of just how corrupt the Clintons are. But what is their relationship with China? Well, China has had a hand in American politics for a very long time. In 2000, Bill Clinton signed the U.S.-China Relations Act of 2000, granting China full normal trade relations status, or NTR. They essentially took over the World Trade Organization because of this.
Of course, this was helped along by Bush Sr. before Clinton, and as we know, every president from Bush Sr. up until Trump bent over backwards and fully submitted to the will of the CCP. Millions of manufacturing jobs were moved out of the United States and into China under these presidents' administrations.
And Trump has been undoing what they did, or at least putting a dent in it. But I mean, that's a lot to undo in just 4 years, right? With Trump cracking down on China, you can imagine that they would want him out of office so they can continue their plans to take over America and then the whole world.
You mean make America crap again?
Yeah, really.
As we can see, the influence of communism and communist propaganda has heavily influenced the minds of many people here in the United States. Many are out celebrating Joe Biden's victory. They must not be aware of Biden's questionable relationship with China, or the fact that the media does not get to control who is the president of the United States of America.
Really. And I guess they overlooked the laptop.
Yeah, seriously.
You know? So their relationship is one that some experts say would be a national security threat should Joe Biden become president of the United States. I mean, you think? It appears that Joe Biden is compromised. It's as if our good friend John D'Souza put it, quote, the deep state chooses the most compromised individuals for positions of power.
Exactly. This is because they are the most easily controlled due to all of the compromising things that would get them in a ton of trouble. By using blackmail, the deep state as well as the CCP can control someone and have them do their bidding, whatever they want them to do.
Exactly. Joe Biden is extremely compromised. Hunter Biden's laptop is enough evidence alone. Joe Biden seems to have received millions of dollars from foreign governments, including China, in what seems to be shady business dealings.
And don't worry, we plan on doing a deep dive into the Biden family history and all these shady business deals we just mentioned in a later episode. That's going to take a while to talk about, and we want to stay on topic for this episode.
Trump has been hard on China. Not its people, of course, but rather the CCP itself. He's brought many jobs back to America, too, and it seems that Trump has always been weary of doing business with China.
President Trump has always used the America First motto, and it seems that he has always recognized the threat that the CCP poses. A letter from the White House spoke of the threat from communist China. Quote, for decades, Donald J. Trump was one of the few prominent Americans to recognize the true nature of the Chinese Communist Party and its threat to America's economic and political way of life, unquote.
It goes on to say, quote, now under President Trump's leadership, the United States is taking action to protect our nation and its partners from an increasingly assertive China. We are no longer turning a blind eye to the People's Republic of China's conduct, nor are we hiding our criticism of its Communist Party behind closed doors. And really, he's the first president. This is the first administration to ever do this. I mean, since Nixon started, opening the borders with Mao.
Right. Another part of the letter mentions that this is not America versus China. It's the Chinese Communist Party and its Marxist-Leninist vision for the world against freedom-loving people all over the world. We cannot slay the Red Dragon if we have a president who can be easily controlled by the CCP, like Joe Biden has and will continue to be.
Yeah, I mean, like we've mentioned, Biden received millions of dollars from the CCP. And they have so much dirt on him that he has become open to blackmail, which is a massive way the CCP operates to control foreign governments. That was clear with the Obama administration, in which Biden served as vice president, and of course they heavily submitted to the CCP. This is actually a threat to what is America.
As compromised as Biden is, and with as much support to the CCP as he's shown over the years, what makes you think that he won't give the US back to China just like he and Obama did before?
Yeah. But the CCP really is on the verge of collapse. A Biden presidency only gives them a chance to regain power. The CCP, as well as the deep state, are like a wounded animal right now. They are still dangerous, but they are dying. This election is their only chance of survival if Biden wins this.
And just like any wounded animal, it only takes one final blow to put it down for good. Are we willing to deliver the fatal blow, or are we going to let the Red Dragon regain its power? This election fraud mess is the very last obstacle to get past in order to beat the deep state and the CCP once and for all.
Some people believe we may have a civil war to deal with as well. But we'll cross that bridge if and when we get there. Now, honestly, I don't believe that will happen. I think it would stop before it resorts to that point. But either way, though, stay vigilant and stay safe. We'll all get through this together. And in the end, we know we will win and continue to move forward positively. After all, realistically, Trump did win the popular vote. Biden stole this election from him.
Well, and thank you for being with us once again. And we're not done yet. There's still a lot to unpack as all the evidence is still emerging. So stay tuned for more election fraud coverage. We're trying to get these out as fast as possible.
Yeah, in our next episode, we'll get into the mask mandates, how states are trying to shut back down, all while this election fraud is going on, and how it all relates. That's a huge rabbit hole in itself, so you won't want to miss that. So until then, we love all of you, and until next time, we will see you out
on the edge.
Mask mandates. Shut down again. Why are states getting stricter about coronavirus protocols while all this election madness is going on? Why is dancing in the street to celebrate an unofficial victory allowed, but operating your business is punished? Find out how election time madness is getting worse, who's being targeted, and the dysfunctional agenda behind it all. Edge of Wonder Special Report Exposing Fraud Part 5, Electile Dysfunction. Get your little blue pill only on the pre-release on edgeofwonder.tv.